everyone. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the pantheon of Greek gods. What do you see? Majestic figures, perhaps, guardians of cosmos, symbols of divine justice and eternal power. But what if I told you the very foundations of their shimmering, golden thrones were drenched in the blood of their own fathers? What if the most celebrated deities of Olympus, from the king of the gods himself, Zeus, to the masters of the seas and the underworld, were not just heirs to a divine legacy, but products of a brutal, intergenerational war of succession, a chilling cosmic tradition of patricide? This isn't merely history. It is a profound, bloody Game of Thrones that shaped the universe, a cycle of fear, betrayal, and ambition that begs the question, can one truly escape the destiny forged by one's own ascent? Tonight, we peel back the layers of myth to expose the shocking, suspenseful saga of father killing, a legacy stained crimson from the dawn of creation to the very zenith. Our story begins in an era almost beyond human comprehension, in the primordial vastness before even time truly found its rhythm. The first ruler, the undisputed sovereign of all that was and would be, was Uranus, the boundless sky, eternally entwined with his beloved, fertile counterpart, Gaia, the earth. Their embrace was the very act of creation, yet beneath this seemingly benevolent, all-encompassing dominion, a deep, malignant fear festered within Uranus's heart. He was a cosmic tyrant, one whose vast power was matched only by his profound insecurity. He dreaded the potential, the raw, untamed might of his own progeny. His children, particularly the formidable Cyclopes, beings of colossal power with a single, searing cyclopean eye, capable of forging mountains and wielding lightning, and the monstrous hecatoncheires, the hundred-handed giants, each possessed of 50 heads and 100 arms, were deemed threats too great to bear. In an act of monstrous cruelty, Uranus made a decision that would he did not merely exile them, he thrust them screaming and struggling into the abyssal gloom of Tartarus, a realm of perpetual torment, a chasm of suffering, deeper than any hell, sealing them away in the innermost bowels of the earth, far from the light, far from freedom. Gaia, their mother, felt the agonizing, suffocating pressure of her imprisoned children within her very being. Each shudder, her silent agony swelled into a desperate, guttural plea for liberation, a mother's cry for vengeance. She yearned for a champion, a son audacious enough, strong enough, and ruthless enough to challenge the tyrannical Sky Father. Her heart, vast as the cosmos, throbbed with a burning desire for justice, a desperate hope for revolution. Among her multitudinous offspring, one finally heeded her desperate, silent appeal. It was Cronus, the youngest, yet perhaps the most cunning and ambitious of the first-generation Titans. He was a being of immense stature, with a scythe-like mind and an iron will, his spirit unburdened by the fear that paralyzed his elder siblings. Cronus saw in Gaia's anguish not just... He envisioned a world where he, not his oppressive father, held the reins of cosmic power. Gaia, in her anguish, her cosmic patience worn thin, forged a magnificent, impossibly sharp sickle from the indestructible adamantine, a weapon honed by her primeval essence, infused with the very will of the aggrieved earth. She presented it to Cronus, its gleaming edge reflecting the cruel ambition in his eyes, whispering a chilling mandate. Avenge your brothers, free them from their living tomb, end your father's tyranny, and claim your birthright. Cronus, his heart a nexus of filial duty and boundless ambition, agreed without hesitation, his resolve as sharp as the weapon he now held. The stage was set, not just for regicide, but for the first epoch, defining act of divine parricide, a deed that would forever warp the lineage of gods. Under the shroud of the deepest night, as Uranus descended from the celestial expanse to embrace Gaia in their nightly ritual of creation. A ritual now marred by his cruelty, Cronus lay in wait. With a stealth born of chilling resolve and a cold, calculating heart, he sprang forth from his hidden lair, the jagged, adamantine sickle, forged from the very essence of the suffering earth, glinted malevolently in the cosmic twilight, a silent harbinger of doom. In one swift, brutal, and utterly irreversible motion, Cronus seized his father, and with a scream that tore through the fabric of the heavens, he castrated him. The sky itself shrieked in agony. Uranus's divine essence, his very lifeblood, rained down upon the pristine earth, a crimson deluge that gave birth to horrific entities, the terrible furies, fey beings of vengeance with serpent hair and bat wings, forever pursuing those guilty of parricide, a chilling karmic echo fey and towering giants, beings of immense strength, born from the very suffering of the old order. From the frothing sea where his severed organs fell, a goddess of breathtaking beauty and sensual allure, Aphrodite, arose from the foam, a paradoxical blossom of love and desire from an act of unspeakable violence. Uranus, diminished, disempowered, and shattered, recoiled, retreating into the furthest, most desolate reaches of the cosmos, forever separated from Gaia, his tyrannical power utterly broken. With his dying breath, or perhaps his final, echoing curse, he foretold Cronus's own inevitable doom, a chilling prophecy that pierced the heart of the newly crowned king. You, too, will be overthrown by your own child. A son will rise, just as you have risen, to cast you down from your ill-gotten throne. Be warned, for the wheel of fate turns for all, and what is given by blood. Cronus, now the supreme ruler, master of the universe, stood triumphant amidst the celestial debris of his father's shattered reign. The echoes of Uranus's scream still reverberated, but for a moment the silence of victory was deafening. Yet Uranus's curse, his final, chilling prophecy, resonated not just in the air, but deep within Cronus's very being, a corrosive poison seep. He had ascended through patricide, seized dominion through an act of ultimate betrayal, and now the spectre of the very same fate haunted his every waking moment. The very means of his triumph became the seed of his profound paranoia, the root of his inescapable dread. Despite his initial promise to Gaia, a sacred vow to free his monstrous siblings, the powerful Cyclopes and the mighty Hecatoncures, from Tartarus, Cronus chose to betray his word. Perhaps he feared their immense raw power, seeing in them the potential instruments of his own overthrow, much as he had been for his aggrieved mother. Instead, he imprisoned them once more, a dark, festering secret buried beneath his newly acquired. Unstable throne, a silent testament to his burgeoning tyranny. The irony was palpable. He had become the very oppressor he had vowed to destroy. His reign was not one of enlightened leadership, but of oppressive silence, a dominion punctuated by the silent dread of the prophecy. He married his sister Rhea, a gentle, nurturing goddess of motherhood and fertility, whose compassionate heart was a stark contrast to his own stony resolve. But their union, meant to bring forth the next generation of gods, was cursed by the deepening shadow of fate, tainted by the blood on Cronus's hands. As each child was born, Fay Hestia, the pure heart of the hearth, Demeter, the life-giving goddess of grain, Hera, the future queen of the gods, Hades, the somber ruler of the underworld, and Poseidon, the mighty lord of the seas, Fay Cronus, driven to the precipice of madness by his relentless paranoia, committed an act of unspeakable, stomach-churning horror. Immediately upon their birth, before Rhea could even cradle them, he snatched them from her loving arms and, with cold, monstrous indifference, devoured them whole, consigning them to the dark, churning abyss of his own stomach. Imagine Rhea's unutterable agony, her heart torn asunder, each maternal fibre screaming in silent protest, watching her beloved infants swallowed by their innocent cries were silenced, their nascent futures extinguished before they even began. Her pleas, her tears, her desperate, futile struggles were all in vain, drowned out by Cronus's inexorable, terrifying resolve. He believed, with an almost delusional certainty, that by consuming his offspring, by incorporating them into his very being, he could nullify the prophecy, digest his destiny, and secure his eternal reign. He believed he was outsmarting fate, but in truth, he was merely delaying the inevitable and amplifying the horror of his own monstrous legacy. Rhea, heartbroken beyond measure, her spirit crushed by the loss of 5 children, finally resolved that enough was enough. The cosmic tradition of father killing would not claim her last child. She was a mother, and a mother's love, when pushed to its limits, could defy even destiny. She sought counsel from her own grieving mother, Gaia, the ancient earth, and from the fragmented, ethereal consciousness of Uranus, the Sky Father himself, whose primal power, though broken, still held sway over certain threads of destiny. Together, they devised a cunning plan, a desperate gamble for the survival of the next generation, a sliver of hope against overwhelming despair. When Rhea was pregnant with her sixth child, she secretly journeyed to the verdant, mystical island of Crete, a sanctuary far from Cronus's ever-watchful, paranoid gaze. There, in a secluded, ancient cave on the sacred slopes of Mount Ida, she gave birth to a son, a babe destined to reshape the cosmos, a being of immense potential, a true son of prophecy, Zeus. To deceive the ever-suspicious Cronus, Rhea returned with a large, heavy stone, meticulously wrapped in swaddling clothes, made to perfectly mimic the weight and feel of a newborn. With a heavy heart, but a determined, unwavering will, she presented it to her monstrous husband. Cronus, his mind clouded by an unyielding paranoia, his hunger for certainty overshadowing any lingering shred of paternal instinct, swallowed the stone without a second thought. He believed, with perverse satisfaction, that he had once again cheated death, consumed his doom, and secured his absolute power. But he had swallowed a mere rock, a lifeless substitute, while the true harbinger of his destruction, his son Zeus, grew stronger by the day, hidden away in the nurturing embrace of Crete. Zeus was nourished by the rich divine milk of the goat Amalthea and sweet honey from sacred bees that buzzed in the mountain caves. He was protected by the fierce Caretes, warrior dancers who clashed their spears and shields with deafening clamor to mask the infant's cries, ensuring Cronus's ignorance. Zeus matured in secrecy, his strength burgeoning with each passing day, his cunning as sharp and precise as any titan's blade. He was not just a child of prophecy. He was a child of vengeance, a coiled spring of cosmic energy, meticulously prepared to unleash an epoch, shattering upheaval upon his tyrannical father. He was the sword of a new era waiting to be unsheathed. Years long and tense slowly spiraled by. Zeus, now a formidable young god, his frame radiating immense power and his eyes gleaming with fierce intelligence, learned of his true parentage, the gruesome fate of his swallowed siblings, and the chilling prophecy that had shadowed his family for generations. The weight of destiny, the blood-soaked history of his lineage, the horrifying tradition of father killing, fueled his resolve to an unquenchable. He understood with crystal clarity that his path, like his father's and grandfather's, was paved with an unavoidable, cataclysmic confrontation. But Zeus, unlike his predecessors, possessed a unique blend of strategic brilliance, raw, untamed power, and a fierce, unyielding determination to not merely usurp his father, but to fey the cycle of fear and tyranny, or at least to control it on his own. Definitive terms, his first audacious step, liberate his swallowed siblings, his true allies, from the dark prison of Cronus. It was a mission of rescue, retribution, and revolution, all rolled into one, with the invaluable aid of Metis, the titaness of profound wisdom and cunning strategy. A being whose intellect was as sharp as her wit, Zeus enacted his audacious, intricate plan. Metis offered him a powerful, magically potent emetic, a potion capable of compelling even a god to... Zeus, perhaps disguised as a cupbearer, or having proven himself worthy enough to gain entry into Cronus's often paranoid and heavily guarded palace, administered the potion to his unsuspecting, perpetually gluttonous father. The effect was immediate and violently dramatic. Cronus, racked with titanic convulsions, his vast body heaving, began to vomit forth his gruesome meat. First came the inert. Heavy stone he had swallowed, a dark, silent testament to his folly. Then, one by one, in a sequence both grotesque and miraculous, his children re-emerged from his monstrous gullet, alive and whole, though eternally marked by their traumatic, unnatural rebirth, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. They were no longer infants but fully grown, powerful gods, instantly recognizing their liberator, their younger brother, the one who had defied fate. A powerful, unbreakable alliance was forged in that breathtaking, cathartic moment, a bond strengthened by shared trauma, mutual vengeance, and a singular, burning desire for radical change. The forces of the New World had finally coalesced. This was the turning point, the dramatic prelude to the greatest, most cataclysmic cosmic war the universe had ever witnessed. The Titanomachy on one side stood the mighty Olympians, a formidable alliance led by Zeus, now powerfully united with his liberated siblings and other newfound allies. On the other, Cronus and the older generation of Titans, unwavering in their defense of the old order. But Zeus, ever the astute strategist, knew he needed more than just his siblings' power. He needed raw, primordial, earth-shaking might. He descended, not to imprison, but to liberate, into the abyssal depths of Tartarus, the very realm his father and grandfather had so cruelly used as a dungeon. There he freed the very beings Cronus had so callously re-imprisoned, the Cyclopes. He offered them freedom, respect, and a chance for ultimate vengeance against their generational tormentors. In return, the Cyclopes, legendary master smiths of lightning and thunder, working with furious dedication, forged for Zeus his signature, world-shattering weapon, the mighty thunderbolt, a weapon of unparalleled destructive force capable of rending the heavens. For Poseidon, they crafted the earth-shaking trident, capable of summoning tsunamis and quaking continents. And for Hades, they fashioned the helm of darkness, granting its wearer the power of invisibility, making him an unseen terror. These divine armaments, forged in the fires of liberation, shifted the balance of power decisively, marking the true beginning of a conflict. For 10 grueling, arduous years, the cosmos was embroiled in a cataclysmic universe, altering conflict. Mountains were rent asunder, their peaks shattered, their foundations laid bare. Oceans boiled and raged, their depths stirred by divine fury. The very fabric of reality groaned and tore under the unimaginable strain of divine warfare. The Olympians, strategically positioned on the majestic, cloud-wreathed Mount Olympus, clashed violently and incessantly with the Titans, whose ancient stronghold was the equally formidable Mount Othrys. Zeus, his eyes blazing with celestial fire, wielded his thunderbolts with devastating precision, raining down fiery destruction, bolts of pure plasma and sonic shockwaves upon his adversaries, each strike a peal of cosmic thunder. Poseidon, with his mighty trident, stirred the seas into a furious, churning tempest, causing earthquakes that shook the very foundations of the earth, cracking the bedrock of creation. Hades, cloaked in his terrifying helm of invisibility, moved unseen through the chaos, striking terror into the hearts of the Titans, a spectral force of death and dread. The Hecatoncheires, with their 100 hands, hurled massive boulders, entire mountains uprooted from the earth. At their foes, an unstoppable, relentless barrage that decimated their ranks. It was a war of unimaginable scale and ferocity, where loyalty was tested, where divine blood flowed like rivers, and the very future of the universe, the very nature of cosmic governance. The air crackled with raw, untamed divine energy. The earth groaned underfoot like a tortured beast, and the heavens themselves seemed to weep fiery tears, witness to the ultimate struggle for supremacy. This was not just a war. It was an existential reckoning. Finally, in a crescendo of thunder, lightning, and earth-shattering power, Zeus unleashed his full, terrifying, unbridled. He channeled the primal forces of the cosmos, a storm of celestial fire and shockwaves that engulfed the Titans, consuming their ancient strength. Cronus, despite his immense primordial power, was utterly overwhelmed, his once feared authority crumbling under the onslaught. The sheer, coordinated force of the Olympians, now fully armed with their new formidable weapons and fueled by generations of righteous fury, proved to be an unstoppable, irresistible tide. The Titans were defeated utterly and irrevocably. Cronus, stripped of his power, his dignity, and his freedom, along with most of his brethren, was cast into the deepest, darkest, most desolate pit. This prison, crafted by Zeus's will and the hecatoncheir's strength, was far more severe, far more inescapable than the one he had inflicted upon his own siblings. There they would remain, bound by unbreakable, magical chains, their reign forever ended, their power nullified, overseen by the very hecatoncheirs they had once spurned. The cycle of father-killing, the brutal ascent of Zeus had not merely triumphed. He had, with thunderous resolve, dismantled an entire cosmic order and forged a new one from its ashes. With Cronus vanquished and the Titans imprisoned, Zeus ascended to the absolute throne, ushering in the glorious, though still turbulent, age of the Olympian gods. He, along with his powerful brothers Poseidon and Hades, drew lots to divide the vast cosmos, a fair and final distribution of ultimate dominion. Zeus claimed the shimmering sky and the supreme rulership of all gods, Poseidon the churning, unfathomable seas and their creatures, and Hades the shadowy, mysterious underworld and the realm of the dead. For a fleeting moment it seemed as though the bloody, generational cycle of patricide had finally been broken. Zeus, the liberator, the champion of the new order, held absolute, unquestioned power. He had overcome his father's tyranny, avenged his siblings, and established a new cosmic regime. But the insidious echoes of prophecy, the chilling whispers of destiny, were not in. Remember Uranus's curse, a legacy of cosmic dread that had haunted Cronus. You too will be overthrown by your own child. Could Zeus, the all-powerful king of the gods, truly escape this seemingly inescapable fate? Or was he merely destined to repeat the bloody traditions of his forebears, forever trapped in the cosmic wheel of violence and usurpation? Zeus, acutely aware of the prophecies, and perhaps having learned bitter lessons from his predecessors' hubris and paranoia, had to navigate his own reign with a blend of unparalleled cunning, strategic foresight, and overwhelming force. His rule was not unchallenged. He faced further terrifying trials, such as the monstrous Typhon, a creature of 100 fearsome snakeheads whose roar was a symphony of destruction. Typhon was a final, desperate attempt by Gaia, the aggrieved Earth Mother, to overthrow the Olympians and avenge her Titan children. Zeus fought and ultimately defeated Typhon in an epic world-shattering battle, cementing his rule through sheer, indomitable power. Then came the Gigantomachy, a brutal war against the Earth, born giants, yet another challenge to his authority, which he also crushed, further securing the Olympian dominion. But the most insidious, the most psychologically unsettling threat came not from external foes, but from the chilling possibility of internal betrayal, specifically from his own offspring. A prophecy, whispered by ancient oracles, foretold that Metis, the very goddess of wisdom and cunning, who had helped him overthrow Cronus, would bear him 2 children. First a daughter, Athena, who would be wise, powerful, and fiercely loyal, but then a son who would be so mighty, so destined as to depose him. Just as he had deposed Cronus, and the cycle loomed large, a dark shadow over his golden throne. Zeus, ever the pragmatist, a master of strategy, and a being driven by the fierce will to retain his hard-won power, decided to act, but not in the crude, brutal manner of his father. He did not, like Cronus, wait for his children to be born and then devour them after their arrival into the world. Instead, he absorbed while Metis was still pregnant with Athena, Zeus, fearing the prophecy's fulfillment, fearing the echo of his own past, tricked her with sweet words and then, swiftly and completely, swallowed her whole. This was not an act of blind, desperate hunger like Cronus's, but a cold, calculated assimilation, a strategic maneuver of cosmic proportions. He believed, quite rightly, that by consuming Metis, he would absorb her profound wisdom, her cunning intellect, her very essence, thereby preventing the literal birth of a son who would usurp him. And indeed, from his own head, fully formed and armored, bursting forth with a battle cry and a flash of divine light, sprang Athena, the goddess of wisdom, warfare, and strategic battle. In a twisted, almost poetic way, Zeus had given birth to his own successor, making her an extension of himself, born from his very mind rather than an independent, prophesied threat. He had averted the physical, brutal act of father killing, the direct usurpation, but only by an act of symbolic consumption and a radical redefinition of paternal succession, demonstrating that even a king of gods cannot truly escape the shadow of destiny without transforming it. So the fundamental question remains, did Zeus truly break the cycle, or did he merely transmute it, twisting its grim mechanics to serve his own ends? He avoided being castrated like Uranus, or devoured like his own siblings by Cronus. That much is true. But his actions, driven by the same profound fear of being overthrown, by the same relentless need for control, demonstrate that the spectre of succession of the next generation rising to claim their due remained opposed. The struggle for ultimate power, the pervasive paranoia that accompanies absolute rule, the relentless machinations of destiny fey, these continued to shape the divine psyche, influencing every decision, every embrace, every battle. The Game of Thrones among the Greek gods wasn't just about bloody sieges, cataclysmic physical battles, or the wielding of unimaginable cosmic power. It was, at its very core, a profound psychological drama, an endless, intricate dance with destiny, where the very act of ascending to power brought with it the chilling, inescapable certainty of one's own potential downfall. Each god, in their turn, confronted the same existential dread, grappling with a fate that seemed preordained, a tradition of father-killing that defined their very lineage, a grim, bloody inheritance passed down through the ages. It is a stark, powerful reflection, isn't it, of our own human struggles with power, ambition, betrayal, and the daunting, inevitable shadow of our own mortality. These ancient myths, far from being quaint fables, are profound explorations of the darkest corners of ambition and the relentless pursuit of dominion, themes that resonate just as strongly in our world today. That is all for today's video. If you found this journey into the brutal heart of Greek mythology intriguing, if you appreciate these deep dives into the cosmic struggles of gods, please consider supporting us. Take a moment. Your support fuels these stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for another dive into the myths that shape our understanding of power and fate.